Hello friends, I'm here with my friend Thomas and we've been thinking about the circular economy and restorative development, and specifically about how to finance it. And there's a big reason for why I'm sharing that with you today, but I've had a lot of conversation in the last couple of months from different directions, industry, governments, especially in Europe, but also in the US. And in my work, I've seen a lot of repeated beginner mistakes. That is what I call it. But one background that I want to share with you why I have, or I think I have deep insight into the topic, is that in my company at Yorth Group, the company I work with, we measured 2 city and regional economies in the last year. For one city, one region in small details, and another one in great details, applying thousands of metrics and indicators, most of who were not used before. So in other words, we completely replaced the definition of success in the old system, and we used new definitions of success and performance metrics that allow us for a completely different communication of success or communication of progress. This gives us a really good insight into the mechanics of economies, social economies, environmental economies, and the economy itself, the one that always pays the price, whether we're measuring for it or not. Just somewhere, it's hidden somewhere, those economic leakages. So let's talk about what causes those leakages. And there are 9 topics that I came up with. There are many, many more. And I know you're going to have some ideas of your own for it, which I'd love to hear as well. But these are the ones that I see repeatedly being ignored. So number 1, that's the first one, is the one we all know. Account for externalities. Apply true cost accounting. Then you're comparing apples and apples and oranges and oranges. If you don't do it, it's not working. You're going to come out with an outcome that you were not desiring. You're basically going to be investing in the linear system, or a circular silo, as I call it. Then number 2, know the impact of the investment on the system. So no linear successes, because they can hinder growth in other areas, and you won't know it because you're probably not measuring for it. And you can't communicate it without measuring for it. So number 3, circular economy or restorative development is not a technical solution. Technical solutions are components within a circular economy. They're very important, but without an overall strategy, it's not going to happen. It's just sustainability. Don't call it circular economy. Number 4, because the reason, actually, if you call it circular economy, you're giving yourself rewards for something that is not what is being asked for. Okay. Number 4, circular economic development produces different outcomes than what you're used to. This is very important. Leaders of companies, CEOs, call for circular economy, and the mid-level executives usually get into a sort of a panic mode, and they wonder what that is. And they start focusing on packaging, or those little pockets and silos everywhere, and they start figuring that out, and that's really difficult. And that's usually a technical solution that people are trying to come up with. But that's not circular economic, okay? So know what you're asking for. This is something that is not so easy, because you need to sort of master, you gotta know what circular economy or restorative development is in order to recognize it. So when you ask for it and somebody gives it to you on a silver platter, will you recognize it for what it is? Number 5, ESGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, net zero goals, those are not the end point. If you design for a net zero outcome, you're not laying the pipes right. You're not going to get the outcome you desire. Your goal must be net positive. So you can only be net positive, this is important, if all the parts are supporting that. So net zero is not, you're not laying the right pipes. Your goal is to be incrementally less negative. Okay. Number 6, accountability, right? those of you who are working in this space, you know all about this. This is really important in community investment, but in every sustainability investment. But what I really want to focus on here, there are 1,000 subtopics there. But what's important there is that you just don't put your money into something and you won't be able to understand the long-term impact of that investment. So be accountable, ask for accountability when you invest in those things. And then for number 7, there's a good background, very important background. Public infrastructure does not support industry. Industries are trying to be sustainable, green or circular in their own silos, in their own corner, and there isn't really good communication between governments and industry. So industry is prone to ask for a permission to pollute or pay low wages or cause externalities. And governments are often, as a part of their economic development strategies, allow that to happen without understanding the system, right? This is absolutely critical. And this is so important because of that. So for number 7, then the issue is be open for private investment in public infrastructure. Public infrastructure is, in Europe, US, we are getting a C and D grade in the infrastructure. So it doesn't support a quality of life and it doesn't support industry. So we get bad grades. But the only thing that is changing is not the grade, but the cost of repairing. So infrastructure funding gaps are increasing every year, little by little, and we balance budgets by not paying for infrastructure and not paying for social programs that are critical to success. The money is there, it's just the government doesn't have it anymore because we're so busy paying for externalities that we're not measuring for. So those economic leakages, we close our eyes to it, we just give those budgets out because we were born into that system, so we don't know how to change it. So be open for infrastructure, for private capital into public infrastructure. Now there is a topic that I want to mention this because this can go in all sorts of directions. I'm not talking about privatizing natural resources or public resources. That's a carefully threaded path. But there's a way through it that's meaningful. Investment does not necessarily mean ownership, and investment does not mean that the investor governs, right? So these are really sensitive topics, but something that is so fun to navigate. There are other things in that category. I could have a whole episode on that, but for the sake of time and not being too boring, I'm going to move on to number 8. And that's very important. What not to invest in. Know what not to invest in. This is happening all the time. And those of you who are in this space, consider your experiences when you need to communicate progress. A lot of money has been spent. And if it's not money, then it's resources. And those can be resources of mayors and CEOs and top executives and the trust of gatekeepers. And you can't communicate progress. What happens? The money dries up, the leadership, goodwill dries up. You see, when that support dries up, the project halts. And it's all because of communication. Number 9, the last one, is the reason for all of these can go wrong. And it's metrics. So you got to use the right metrics. And that's because without the metrics, without synergistic metrics that give you an idea of how the parts work together, you can't really understand the system. We get so busy working in our silos that and those silos can last the lifetime of the investment. If it's infrastructure, it can be 30 years, maybe more. Are we going to leave those investments stranded, or are we going to need to make other investments to kind of invest our way out of that? Or are we going to be stuck with it? And then if we do that in our projects, what about our competition? What about industries? What about the other parts of the world? Are they going to leap forward while we are stuck in bad investments? You see, this is so critical because with these investments, the trillions of dollars and euros going into circular economy, Green Deal and all of that, if we don't get the system, we are going to get successes in the silos and the politicians are going to talk about that. but we're not going to move the needle. It's not going to be a measurable change. The world isn't going to be better. Industry is not going to be better. And quality of life is not going to improve. So this is so important. And that's why I wanted to mention this. But Thomas and I are going to go for coffee now. But we'll be back later. But if you be so kind, then leave your thoughts and experiences, and maybe this can be a small part of a public discussion about what we're all experiencing and what we think is going to be important and how we can make the change. All right, thanks guys, see ya.